Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Here's what we've got coming up. Not a lot of football, domestically that is, because we're going on holiday. And pints at football? What's going on? I love it, but does everyone else? Lots going on, so let's hear some music. I am your host, Andrew Slaven, and joining me is our man down under. Not underneath me, but he is a filmmaker and editor, Findlay Marks. Hello, mate.
Hey, mate. How you doing?
I'm good. Finn, you'll be delighted to hear that we've got Laura Brannan back. West Ham super producer. Laura Brannan, hello, mate.
Hello. We're all back together again.
Yeah. What have you been up to, Laura? Have you been saving animals?
That and working solid, but it's a World Cup coming up now, so I'm going to get a nice break and get to enjoy 4 games a day in the pub. What a better way to spend my November?
Interesting. You get a break. That's not too bad. I'll still be working because there's a lot of National League still going on BT Sport and stuff. So there's plenty of that going on. Finn, what are you up to?
Nothing that bears mentioning on a podcast, to be honest. Working, that's it.
But wait a minute. You said on Instagram the other day you went and saw some cricket. You went and saw England win a trophy.
Boo.
This is a disgrace.
Well, a friend of mine, so Australia was hosting the T20 Cricket World Cup, of which Scotland qualified for, but you know, true to form, we didn't get out the group stage. So a friend of mine, he's a big cricket fan, had a spare ticket to the final, which was England versus Pakistan. And yeah, the irony of being a Scotsman watching England win a World Cup was not lost on a lot of my friends from back in the UK. So yeah, it was a great atmosphere. Shame, obviously, about the result, but at least it's a sport that doesn't really matter.
Bring back Andrew Dixon. That's what I say. He's my new favourite baldy podcaster. Right, so look, it's been a pretty funny weekend in England. Fleetwood Town against Bristol Rovers. A weird kind of Back to the Future. Scott Brown against Joey Barton, and this was refereed by Bobby Madden. It's so weird.
It was like I saw somebody on Twitter describe it as a 2016 Premiership Legends game. In both dugouts, you had Joey Barton and Scott Brown. On the pitch, you had Scott Sinclair, Jordan Rossiter, Joey Garner, Sean Rooney, and Josh Vela. And as you were saying, the referee was Bobby Madden. So, yeah, delightful scenes down in England.
And Sean Rooney, still banging them in as well. St Johnstone would love to have him back. My God, for a fullback, he's always been amongst the goals.
The best part of that was Joey Barton got sent off again.
Obviously.
Yeah, it rounded it out perfectly.
Amazing. It finished, what was it, 2-2?
I've got no idea.
Yeah. it did, Finn.
Don't care.
You're too busy watching England win the cricket, mate.
You've changed, Finn.
Laura, what have you seen over the weekend?
Did you see Lewis Ferguson's goal?
I did.
I feel like I'm saying this a lot, by the way, this season. I think it's his 3rd one of the season. What a screamer this was, by the way.
It wasn't the only former Scottish Premier League player scoring a screamer on the continent this weekend, though. Did you see Nikola Katic's goal as well in Switzerland?
I haven't, no.
It is an absolute screamer. Just to add insult to injury for poor Rangers fans who are currently supporting a club with no fit centre-backs. The one that they got rid of during the summer is now scoring absolute worldies and doing bits in the Swiss league.
Was it from a corner or something?
No, for some reason he was kind of up front by himself, and the ball, it's not a position you would expect Nikola Katic to be in at all, and it kind of drops to him and he hits, I can't remember if it's a full volley or a half volley, but he just absolutely melts it and it slams in from about 25-ish yards into the top bin. This absolutely stunning strike.
It on once more. Ayunga puts it away at the second attempt. St Mirren are loving taking on the Old Firm this season, but Rangers concede the first goal again.
Well, look, the pressure has been mounting on Gio Van Bronckhorst's Rangers for quite a few weeks. They drew against St Mirren at St Mirren Park. Joseph Ayunga gave St Mirren the lead, and then after Ryan Kent was awarded a penalty after initially being given a yellow card for diving, It was James Tavernier who brought along the equaliser. Look, it was still a point, but in this day and age, in this world, a point is a disaster for Rangers.
It is, but it's kind of just more of the same. It's what's been served up for the last number of weeks. I can't see any signs of it getting better. It's the same stuff. And I think so many of the other coaches in the top flight see how easy it is to play against the system, and I use air quotes around that Rangers are trying to employ. You heard David Martindale a few weeks ago after Livingston took a point at Ibrox say, well, we know if we just let them go wide and spend all the time crossing the ball into the box and give them all the possession, that they probably won't do much with it. And, he was proved right. And it was more of the same against St Mirren. For all the possession, there's no quality chances being made. And Rangers again have to rely on a late goal and a penalty this time to get anything out of the game, which I don't even know if they deserved that.
It's funny you say that, because about 24% of Rangers' play went down the middle. So you're right, they played to the width as much as they possibly can. But the weird thing for me is Celtic have scored 16 more goals than Rangers this season, in the league, I should say. But there's so much attention on the fact that Alfredo Morelos has been such a great servant for Rangers, and the kind of anger and frustration for some Rangers fans, it's not just towards Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. Some of it's bleeding on to Alfredo Morelos. And you look at some of the stats that he has in this game, he lost possession more than any other Rangers player. And in fact, Scott Arfield, who came on as a substitute just after half-time, had just as many touches as Morelos in half as much time on the pitch. Yeah. And it does beg the question, is it just Morelos? Because when I watch Rangers, there's no energy, there's no fight. As much as they have like a dominance in possession, is it just Morelos, or are there more players that should be taking the blame other than just Gio Van Bronckhorst's kind of style of play?
I think the flagship names in the team tend to come in for it, and this isn't just a Rangers problem, this is a football fan problem. Whenever a team's not doing well, it's the more expensive players or the players that you look to for inspiration that usually get it in the neck first. I think Ryan Kent's been hauled over the coals by the Rangers support a lot this season. Morelos was just absolutely shocking at the weekend, but I think it kind of, you know this about him, like if his head's not in it, he can be really disinterested. But I think, to your point, I do wonder if it's something tactically as well, because the players don't seem to be able to enact what Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, I think, is trying to ask them to do. There have been a few occasions this season, I think quite worryingly, where post-match, if Rangers have had a poor result, Van Bronckhorst has said, the players weren't doing what I asked them to do. And that's the real issue. And there was even a point at the weekend, I think Jordan Campbell mentioned in his Athletic article, about how Tavernier at one point, when Van Bronckhorst was shouting at him to have done something, I think it was to run where he should have run forward or something, Tavernier turned around and shouted back at him. I was like, that's not a great look if your captain's shouting back saying, I can't do something, or what do you want me to do? I think there are much more deeper systemic issues. It's nothing new. We've been talking about this for weeks, but I think it surely is too difficult for Van Bronckhorst to come back from this. I think once you lose the fans, it's tricky. I think he's losing the players as well, and there's no way back. I can't see. So I'm surprised he's not gone. I understand why he hasn't, but I just see this season kind of like limping on for Rangers from this point. I don't know if even getting a few players back in January will help them that much per se, because there are no discernible signs of anything changing.
Laura, this is another positive result for Stephen Robinson, who you know well. They sit 7th though in the table, and they would be expecting, probably with all this positivity going on, to be a little bit higher up.
Yeah, actually, when I looked at the table, I was quite surprised at how low down they were, because I was kind of thinking of, they're doing really well, they're picking up some really good results. And then to see them in the bottom half, I'm like, oh, right, okay. I mean, you're saying that they are winless in 4 games, but they're also unbeaten in 8 home games. Their home record's been outstanding so far. I don't think they've actually lost a game at home since the opening day of the season when they lost to Motherwell. So, I mean, it's a really, really good run they're going on. They're playing exciting football. They're playing good football to watch as well. Stephen Robinson's got them set up well. They're exciting. They've got talented players in every kind of aspect of the team. It feels like they've kind of got a real spine built there. Mm-hmm. And that's good foundation to have for the season, obviously. I do feel like they were so unfortunate in this game, though, in general. They put up such a good fight, led for so long. I feel like I'm the only one that actually thinks this, but I thought the penalty was harsh. I know an original thought the ref agreed with me. But I feel like it was a very harsh turn in this round. I know Stephen Robinson came out after the game and actually said, yeah, it was a penalty, which I'm surprised by. Not really help my argument here, Robbo, but I'm going to stand by that. I still think it was very harsh.
I think if the football man in the dugout says it's eventually a penalty, it's probably a penalty, Laura. Come on.
I'm down on that hill. I'm absolutely down on this hill.
Look, St Mirren gave Rangers just one stand, but they had a crowd of 6,358. The equivalent fixture last season got just over 6,000. It was brilliant. This thing we spoke about, Laura, earlier on this season about St Mirren trying to maximise their stadium capacity. It's looking really good so far.
Yeah, this is class. It's working for them. I think a similar stat came out after they played Celtic as well, just to kind of prove, look, it's justified what we're doing. We're getting our own fans in, and it's working because they're also taking points off these teams as well at the same time. Last year, they took no points off Celtic or Rangers at home. This season so far, they've taken 4 out of 6. And they've been filling their stadium with more of St Mirren fans.
Moving on to Celtic, who have been just unbelievable over the last 2 months. I think that's 8 games and a winning streak that they're on now. Ross County did get the lead on them through the most dubious of handballs. I mean, it hits his hand, but this is making a mockery now of bringing VAR into the Scottish game, because when it hits Matt O'Reilly, I'm sorry guys, but just tell me you're all with me. This is nowhere near a deliberate handball and therefore not a penalty.
But it's not about deliberate handball anymore.
What are you talking about?
Well, it's not about, was it ball to hand, was it hand to ball? That was an argument for about 10 years ago. Was it below the T-shirt line? Yes, it was.
What are you on about?
I don't know if the FIFA rules mention anything about a T-shirt line. For me, I agree with you, Andrew. I don't think this is a penalty, because I think the two main things to me that I take from the FIFA rules is the player making their body unnaturally bigger, which I don't think Matt O'Reilly was. And also in terms of reaction time, has he got any time to reasonably move his hand out of the way? And I don't think he does either. So
that's the main one for me.
That's why me it's not a penalty. I don't want to chuck the baby out with the bathwater, though, about the whole VAR thing. I think...
Great description.
If I'm being perfectly honest, I've actually been surprised at how many decisions, trying to be as objective as possible, how many decisions I think VAR's actually called correctly in terms of not just penalties, but, sendings off or things like that as well. The problem with VAR is that the computers aren't wrong. It's to provide an alternative viewpoint to the referees, and then it's about personal interpretation. So the interpretation of the rule on this occasion, I think, is wrong because of what the rule states and given the evidence available.
Yes.
But it's not going to happen all the time. But I've actually been surprised in the main. I think the vast majority of the VAR decisions have been right. I mean, even just very quickly to go back to the Kent thing, and Laura was talking about it as well, the right decision was got to in the end. It wasn't a dive, there was contact, it was in the box, it was a foul, therefore it is a penalty. So that's why VAR should be there, is to, as much as possible, be an aid to the officials and to help reach the right decision. But this is an occasion where it wasn't.
It's still also not destroyed the debate in the game, which is one of the fears. So Celtic made 6 changes for this game, and let's face it, they were held till the second half. But the one thing that you can never say about Celtic is that they don't just crumble in games, especially when they go behind now. And one player that I think deserves special mention, probably 2 to be fair, Rio Hatate for me seems like one of these players that is probably going to move to the Premier League within a year, maybe 2 years, for good money, because the guy, his first touch, his movement, his vision is unbelievable. And he finds Haksabanovic so perfectly to make it 2-1. Haksabanovic as well for Celtic has been, I think, just over 400 minutes of football for him so far. And his impact has probably went under the radar, I think, with most Celtic fans. I think they're onto another really, really smart signing. They're looking very unstoppable right now. And another special mention, Laura, for David Turnbull, your old mate.
Getting in the goals again.
And a few starts as well.
Yeah, I think he really needs to push on now. And either cement himself in the first team again or push on. You see when you look at like Lewis Ferguson scoring in Italy, I just think of that's his perfect kind of player that needs to go abroad to really kind of broaden his football development and education.
Do you think there was a few murmurings that his next step should be to try and go out on loan? Knowing his character and who he is as a person, do you think he's more of the type of person who would rather stay around and fight for his place rather than just go and search for more first-team football?
No, I think actually pushing himself onto new levels rather than the stubbornness of just trying to get into that one team. If there's going to be a level above and beyond or a new league that he can test himself and prove himself in, then he believes in himself enough and his ability that I don't think it would hold him back in any way. And I think he's right to think like that as well, if that was the case.
Moving on, another team who are excellent at home, Aberdeen. They beat Dundee United 1-0 thanks to Bojan Miovski's penalty. Miovski's been linked, by the way, with a $4 million move to France.
Wow.
I mean, he has been excellent this season. He's joint top goal scorer in the league, but he seems to be a player that, and a few of them as well, that Jim Goodwin has moulded a good team out of, a few good players that have came in, because Duke, who's become a bit of a fan favourite at Aberdeen, he wins the penalty from a pass from Majowski as well, as I have to point out. Aberdeen, just a very exciting team, albeit I thought Dundee United played quite well in this game.
I think you're right about Aberdeen. I mean, it's Aberdeen at home, so you kind of back them to win. And Jim Goodwin's, in terms of their front line, I think, has done a really good job bringing in Miovski and Duke, and there's a couple of other players that have made contributions off the bench as well, which is the turnaround from last season where they really struggled with their options up front, despite, I think, on paper having some pretty good options. Fraser Hornby on loan and Bruce Anderson, but it's the other end of the pitch. I think defensively they've been a lot more suspect, although not at home. For Dundee United, though, I mean, they did play well, but they're still yet to win an away match from home this season in the league, and that's really troubling. Pittodrie's not the easiest place to go, but I think they really need to start looking to, once they come back, amending that, because that can be really dangerous. And if they start to drop points at home as well, it can put them in a pretty precarious position, more precarious than they already are.
Kilmarnock 1, Hibs 0. Weird stat I found off the back of this. Apparently Derek McInnes, manager of Kilmarnock, has never lost a top flight game as a manager against Hibs, which is nuts.
It's very specific.
It's very specific. But for Hibs, Lee Johnson, I mean, I don't know if the guy's getting found out a little bit, but I know they were unlucky. They did hit the back of the net through, I can't pronounce his name, so I'm not going to give it a go. It was just offside. And one thing we can say about VAR is that is certainly black and white. But 6 of the last 7 matches have ended in losses, Laura.
Yes, it's not been a good one at all. Hibs were up battling in 3rd place at one point not that long ago, and now they're down to 8th. That's the sort of turnaround you get the Championship, not the Premiership. And you've just got to kind of ask questions of what's actually happened. And as you're saying, Lee Johnson, is the bubble bursting for him, or is it just one of these bad spells you go through over the course of a season, and you might end up he picks it up after the World Cup? It's a wee bit of a concern. It's a bit of a stumbling block, this bit. St
Johnstone v Motherwell, 1-1 it ended, but I have to say, this game was balls. That's my assessment. David Wotherspoon, though, off to the World Cup, off to Qatar. He was involved in the first goal. Well, look, for St Johnstone, unbeaten in 5 now.
I think the upturn in St Johnstone's fortunes, it's pretty much, we know this, it's all dependent on if Stevie May plays well, St Johnstone play well. And I think, like, in the Rangers game the other week, the way that he spun Tavernier to cross in for Nicky Clark's goal was just majestic. We saw when he scored the goal at Tannadice a couple of weeks before that as well. He's just a magnificent man, and I demand he gets it back in the Scotland national team.
Shut up. You just love his hair, or miss his hair.
I'd insanely jealous of Stevie May's hair.
Laura, only Motherwell's 2nd draw of the campaign. 2 wins in 10 matches, 8 defeats. It's not been plain sailing for Stevie Hamill.
It's really not good on paper, is it? You look at the stats on paper, it's not nice reading. But, and I think I've said this before during this bad run, it's not worrying because they're playing really good football.
There was no good football in this game, Laura.
Do you know, this is the first Saturday of the season I have worked a West Ham game and missed the Motherwell game. So I think maybe, going by what you're saying, I've chosen the right one to miss. But I don't see the fans panicking yet, because Stevie Hamill's got them playing good football, and I think they went on such a long run under Graham Alexander where the football wasn't pretty for such a while. I think fans are actually just enjoying a wee bit of excitement in games right now, even if they're not coming away with all 3 points at the end of it. So, I mean, albeit that's not going to last forever. And that's not something you can live off for the whole season. But right now, it's not quite panic stations.
Hearts won, Livingston won. I think Livingston were pretty hard done by here. It was a 7-minute injury time equaliser from Josh Ginnelly. Hell of an equaliser, to be fair.
And how miserable did he look as well?
No, he wasn't miserable. He was trying to be cool.
Is that what it was? That the kids do nowadays, eh?
Yeah, he was like, he scored an absolute screamer, and it was one of those kind of like, see that, look at that. I'm not going to do that for a while, so enjoy that.
I think that's okay, but like I'm much more a fan of was it Duke that ripped his shirt off for what he thought was the winning goal away at Ross County. He was going crazy, and then Ross County got an equaliser anyway, so it kind of didn't matter. But I'd much rather a player do that. Just go absolutely tonto in front of the away support.
Of course, Finn. We're editors here. We're used to doing hype videos. Of course, we want all the drama and the passion and oozing out of them. Not Mr. Cool standing there with his arms folded.
Well, I know we're going to talk about Scotland in a little while, Laura, but Craig Gordon saving a penalty, saving hearts. Steve Clark said this week that he can play until he's 43 in time for the next World Cup.
Not sure that's what Liam Kelly wants to hear, but there's absolutely no stopping this man, is there?
What is it with you in defending Motherwell players?
Oh, he's my boy. I'm going to defend him. Of course I will. He's Scotland's next number one. Obviously, I'm going to defend him. But yeah, I mean, there's no stopping Craig Gordon just now. I mean, he's so old. But he's just getting better and better. He's like a fine wine.
Someone called me a fine wine. I'd take that.
And Stevie May! Bedlam! Chaos! Euphoria in the away stand! Blue limbs everywhere!
We're off to Turkey, yay! Yes, folks, we're off to Turkey, yay! If you're not aware, Turkey did actually change their name to Turkey, yay! They are the country equivalent of Kanye. It is weird, right? But Turkey v Scotland, Wednesday the 16th. I'm going to say something that Laura's not going to be happy, but I am not excited for this, Laura. So I give you the floor and you can make me happy to see Scotland play Turkey, yay!
Look, this is probably the least exciting Scotland game you're ever going to have. We're
Not a good start, Laura.
Literally days away from a World Cup. And we're going to play a friendly.
Going for a wee holiday.
Friendlies have been very few and far between, which has been a very nice thing of recent years. It's not great timing, but it's International Week, it's International Month, and what better way to start it than with a Scotland game. It's just given us a little taste of what could have been for the next month.
Oh, that's just depressing,
yeah, it's
Laura.
not cruel at all, is it? It's just, I'm trying hard here, but even I'm struggling a wee bit.
It's one of these things where, like, I mean, obviously, there are no Celtic players that are going because they're off to Australia.
Which, by the way, is utterly pathetic. Come on.
How?
Oh, this trip is a glorified PR stunt. They're travelling halfway across the world to play friendlies that make absolutely no difference to their careers.
But this is a friendly.
But this is a branding effort for Celtic to make money.
Instead of Scotland doing a PR thing in Turkey, yay.
Scotland have an international fixture they have to fulfil. Now, yes, I'd be all for them actually playing a team that were actually going to the World Cup to have purpose in this fixture, and because Turkey also have nothing to do, it does make it a wee bit more boring. But this isn't a pointless PR venture for Scotland. No Scotland game is pointless. David Turnbull is going halfway across the world to play for Celtic in a meaningless friendly tournament. It's completely meaningless. He could be playing for Scotland against Turkey, winning a cap and making an actual name for himself and a case for playing in the Euro 2024 qualifiers come the start of next year. Which one is more important for his career? But Ange Postecoglou has came out and said his players aren't going to play for Scotland. And I think that is shocking. Playing for your country is the highest honour you could ever have as a footballer, and he is depriving them of that.
I think it's the contractual reasons, I think, because the tournament that Celtic are going over to play, they'll probably have some sort of contractual thing of taking all of the players in the first team squad, so it's not a diluted trip, if that makes sense, because there tend to be a lot of teams that come out on pre-season tours. Well, it tends to be pre-season, not mid-season, but obviously we've got the World Cup, to places like Southeast Asia and Australia and the States, which are just money-making PR stunts, but it's also to try and appeal to growing supporter bases out here. I think it's slightly different in a place like Australia, because Australia has one of the biggest Scottish expat communities, and these are people that would ordinarily have no way of seeing Celtic. So it's kind of fair that they get to see Celtic at their strongest. But yeah, I agree with you entirely. I understand why Celtic have said that their players won't be released for international duty, but I think it's a shame.
But they haven't said it about the players that are going to the World Cup.
No. But
that's treated as more important.
No, but the argument is that it's not a designated international window.
So money talks.
Yeah, and contractual agreements talk.
It's just nuts that a club has that sort of power when international football should be considered more powerful, the be-all and end-all.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, that is their employer. They're the ones who pay their wages. So
yeah, but those players are the names they are, and the ability they have, and the value that they're on is because they play international football.
Well, I mean, there's a few other players missing out. No Shanklin, who I think's been excellent this season. Strange that, the likes of maybe Ryan Gauld not getting a call up. He's one that's, always kind of attracted interest from a lot of players. You think he's unlucky, Laura?
Yeah, I mean, there's shouts for... He's had an outstanding season for Vancouver. But, and the likes of Johnny Russell and Lewis Morgan, also in MLS just now, their season has ended quite a few weeks ago. So, we're talking about friendlies here. To keep a player fit and travel for that length of time for what is essentially a pointless friendly does seem a bit daft. Yes, when you've got that ability and you've had that season, it would have been nice to see how he fitted into the squad. I just don't think it would have been worth it this time round, though.
Yeah.
Well, but you say that, Laura, but you were just making the point about David Turnbull. Why is he going to play a pointless friendly in Australia when we could be staking a claim for a starting place in the Scotland team? Is it not worth players like Gauld and Russell and Morgan doing that? I mean, because they're modern professionals. It's not like they go and drink beer and eat pies in the off season. Like, they'll be keeping themselves fit. So, but also as well, even if they're not playing, or if they come off and play 10, 15 minutes in the game or something like that, or just to be around the squad, is it not worth it from that point of view?
But my argument was, it is not worth it to travel halfway across the world for a friendly, which is the same as what I'm saying for Celtic players going to Australia, as it is what I'm saying Gauld playing for Scotland. It's still a lot of transport for what is essentially not an important 90 minutes. Yes, it would be very valuable for him to join up with the squad, but this is a boy that does know a lot of the players to start with, though. He's not a stranger to these players. He's played with quite a few of them before. The likes of Andy Robertson and Stuart Armstrong, I'm pretty sure he shared a flat with the two of them when he was at Dundee United. So they're not new to him. I'm pretty sure that given his professionalism, he would so easily fit into a squad effortlessly if he was called up for the actual qualifying tournament itself. So, no, I don't think it is as essential. Plus, you've also got to look at the argument of we don't actually need very much cover for his position right now. So we're not short in options. So why would we be calling up a boy to play 10 minutes in Turkey when he's not played football for 3-4 weeks and it's his only time off to actually spend time with his family and travel and have a holiday or go home and see his family?
Yeah, just get his family shipped out to Turkey, eh? They can have a party, eh? That's what I think.
I think the point that you made, though, Andrew, I think Shankland is a pretty glaring omission from the squad. I really think he's earned his place. I remember saying when he was banging in the goals for Dundee United in the Championship and he got called up and scored against the Pharaohs, I think it was.
Yeah, that was.
I was a bit unsure about that because I'm like, you're not playing, I thought, a high enough level to justify playing for the Scotland national team, but we had a kind of dearth of strikers, I guess, at the time. But as you're saying, I think he's been outstanding for Hearts this season. The goals that he scored, the types of goals that he scored, and the way that he's done it in big games as well and at important points. I think it's a bit of a glaring omission not to have him even in the squad, even if he's maybe not going to start. Because I think the point of a friendly like this as well, where there's nothing really riding on it, surely this is the time to experiment. surely this is the time to bring in players that haven't had as much of a look in. I don't know what Steve Clarke's going to learn about playing Lyndon Dykes and John McGinn and all these players that start most of the games. Craig Gordon, let Craig Gordon please just have one game off.
He's just a kid as well. Let him stay at home and have a week off.
Exactly. That to me is, I suppose it's kind of that thing that's indicative of the Steve Clarke thing, because he's so keen on this kind of club mentality, and it's the same players and we're trying to use them all the time. But to me, this is the perfect time to experiment, to bring in players like Shanklin and Gold, I think, should be in there. And there's another couple of ones as well.
Is Shanklin really an experiment? Is it really testing him? I mean, this is a boy who was in the squad when we qualified for the Euros. He's not untested and untried. We know what he can do.
But he's also better than he was.
That there is this, and we're also very short on strikers, so I'm not saying don't include him. I just don't think it is let's try him out and it's a gamble. It's not a gamble. It's a comfortable inclusion, and he should be in the squad, of course.
Absolutely. I mean,
especially with Shea Adams dropping out as well.
Worth saying, it's really exciting seeing Calvin Ramsey in there too. Obviously got his first game for the first team at Liverpool and seems to be very, very well liked there. And the coaches do genuinely see a lot of big things from Calvin Ramsey. Obviously, he's got some massive fullbacks that he has to dethrone, but they like him a lot. And I hope he starts. I really hope he gets a chance to play. The fact that Aaron Hickey is injured and hasn't travelled as well, he'll be fighting that out with Nathan Patterson. But what is it with us in fullbacks? We're just so good at them. You say it's a pointless friendly all the time, Laura, but and I kind of said the same as well, but we are going into a month of what should be an amazing month of football with the Qatar World Cup. I have my views on this, which I'll give you in a bit, but Laura, I know you're a big fan of international competitions and you must be very enthusiastic about this.
I cannot bloody well wait. And I'm not going to get bogged down in everyone's miserable morals and stances against the country and everything that's gone on in the past, because that is the past. It's happened. We just need to accept it and deal with it. It is happening, whether you like it or not. There's a big tournament about to start. I have my wall chart. I am absolutely ready. And I am so excited about 4 games a day. Absolutely brilliant. I just think once we're in it, everyone will just be swept away as normal. There was all these debates before about Russia holding it and other problems like that. Once you're in it, nobody cares. It's all about the football.
Have you got the Panini sticker book?
No, I don't get that unless Scotland are in it. So I saved that one for the Euros. I don't care about the teams that much, but I care about the overall tournament. So yeah. I've got my wall chart, I'm happy.
Have you ever done that, Finn? You're a Panini man.
Oh, yeah, massive fan of the sticker books. I've done it for the 20... Oh, I obviously did it for all the tournaments, but also the leagues as well growing up. But the World Cups, I did it in 2014, and I think I did it in 2018 because when we worked at Copa 90, Laura, there was like an office pool of stickers. So you could kind of like do trades quite easily to complete your collection. I won't be doing it this year, no. Really tragically, this is the least excited I've ever been for any international tournament. I love the World Cup. I still think in an age where club football, I think, has usurped international football, where the pinnacle of the sport, whether we like it or not, is the Champions League, really. That's the big draw. I still think there's a magic about the World Cup, international football in general, but especially the World Cup, which is you can't buy it. And what the World Cup is supposed to represent is this glorious celebration of not just football, but it's all of these different cultures and people coming together, coalescing in a place to share that hopefully friendly rivalry, but culture and joy of what football can be as a sport, more than just the action on the pitch, but like what it represents to play for your country. Much in the same way that I think the Olympics does the same thing for athletics, but I think that's why I'm not excited about it this time, because I think this particular tournament, I'm just not the same as you, Laura. I can't dissociate it with everything else going on. I think this tournament is the antithesis of everything the World Cup should be and what it should stand for. I can't bring myself to look beyond the fact that 6,500 migrant workers have died since Qatar were awarded the World Cup, that it's happening in a country that's the same size as Yorkshire, effectively, when, the joy of the World Cup is seeing all of these different spaces and places and the football culture in the host country. And that's without even touching on what's been in the news so much recently about the human rights issues and the fact that you can't be gay in these countries. And it's in the middle of the season. Like the joy of the World Cup is that it's in the summer. It's dreadful. Like, there's no space for you to build up that enthusiasm.
But you don't know it's rubbish yet because we've not experienced it. It might actually be quite nice. On hindsight, we might be like, oh, remember that time we actually stopped the season for like a Christmas World Cup? Right now it looks like we're not going to enjoy it, and there's all these problems because of the timing, but we actually, let's try it.
I think Laura has one point I kind of agree on. I think when the competition starts and the football starts rolling, I think most people will enjoy it. My fear is that enjoyment will still overshadow potentially everything that you've pointed out, Finn, which are still important things and issues that we are still trying to tackle in our own country.
Look, of course, they're important issues.
And the real key thing is that it's going to be that battle throughout the competition. Where, Laura, you may be right, and we may just enjoy the whole competition.
But the thing is, it's not like.
But that might continually keep battering it, and it will become a total distraction to FIFA. And I'll bring this some positivity here, Laura. I hope that this is the beginning of not Jurassic Park, but World Cup Island. I want this to be the reason that it shouldn't go to any country. It should just be one island. I don't know where the island should be. Somewhere hot and sexy.
No, that sounds
horrible.
horrible.
It should just be World Cup Island. We can have theme parks. We can have like attractions and stuff like that. We can low price alcohol and fizzy drinks, free popcorn, and we'll have the super stadiums that can hold like 100,000 people for every game. And it's World Cup Island. I think it's a great idea.
This sounds awful. This is absolutely awful.
Why have it in a country that has so much negativity surrounding it, which will only allow you to buy alcohol from 6:30 in the evening until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which is actually quite sensible. But you can't even hold hands in public. You need to cover your shoulders and cover your knees in a country that's about 1 million Celsius. That for someone who struggles in anything above 18 degrees, and I completely understand that. This is the advert for World Cup Island. Look, I am not for a second saying any of that does not matter. What I'm saying is, by Finn sitting there and saying, I'm not buying the Panini sticker album because I don't agree with where this World Cup is held, it's nonsense because it's not going to change anything. This is a private stance that he's making. Nobody's ever going to know that he's making this sort of protest. Are you saying nobody listens to this podcast, Laura? But I'm not saying that because I'm excited about the World Cup, I don't believe in gay rights. You can still enjoy the football tournament for what it is. I completely agree that all the bad things are happening, but this was an argument for 10 years ago when the tournament first got awarded to Qatar, and there was all the uproar over FIFA and the corruption. It is a complete joke, and I'm right there with you. But we are now literally days away from the football kicking off, and to me, that's what we're all should be talking about at this stage.
I'm not trying to make a point or a stance, and I'm not trying to actively be miserable or not watch the football because of all the circus sideshow that's going on with the Qatar World Cup as an event. I'm just saying that all of that stuff, I can't disassociate it, and therefore it has tempered any form of excitement or build-up that I've had going into this World Cup. I'll be watching as many of the games as I can. I mean, most of them kick off at arse o'clock for me over here in Melbourne, but I'll try and watch games I know inevitably I will. And I hope the tournament's good. I hope the football's good, and I hope it's celebrated as a football tournament. There's so much other stuff round about it that it can't do anything but temper how good it could possibly have been because of all the negative stuff that's going around it. And I just find that really difficult to dissociate that from it. It's a good thing. If you have time, anyone who's listening, to watch FIFA Uncovered on Netflix, it's so good, and gets deep into the kind of grills of Sepp Blatter, who's an actual kind of participant in the docu-series. Really, really interesting. But like I said, guys, I think
whatever World Cup or major tournament after this one, it's going to be so much better than it. And that's why I
100%.
cannot
And we'll
wait.
be there.
We will be there at World Cup Island. It's going to be
No.
great. It's going to be great, guys.
Regrets? No, it's good laugh on it. So
I didn't find it funny.
All right, Saturday was a big day, a historic day, some might say. The first pint was pulled inside a Scottish football stadium, or at a football event this millennium. Other than corporate hospitality, of course, there's big posh people that have all the money and they can just sit up there with their swanky chairs and their cigars. And we're not counting the 2014 Commonwealth Games either, when Ibrox were pouring pints for the rugby. Alcohol has been banned at Scottish football matches since 1980. But this could be about to change, guys. Celtic were granted a licence to sell alcohol in the concourse of one of the stands for 2 hours before their game against Ross County. And apparently it's their first ever draft beer at Celtic Park. Again, outside of hospitality, because they never sold draft beer before. But Laura, how straightforward is this? How much pain are people going to go through and wait to have some sweet, sweet lager down their gullet?
It's really not as straightforward as it all sounds. Yay, we have pints in football now. It's not really like that. So Celtic fans got to drink beer in the concourse, which is a total novelty in Scotland. But it was only between the hours of 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. The game wasn't until 3 o'clock, so the fans had to leave the stadium at 1 o'clock and do God knows what for at least half an hour, because the turnstiles then didn't open till 1:30. So I'm not quite sure what they actually did between the hours of 1 and 3, but essentially this was just a glorified another form of hospitality, because they were just in what was a pub in a quite a novel environment.
Was this a trial thing? Was this something to try and prove it can be done?
Yeah, I mean, this has been talked about. Well, it was talked about quite a bit before the Scottish Cup final in 2016, where there was talk of low risk games and different clubs getting to sell alcohol in different environments and different matches, depending on who they were playing against, what time of day the game was, what day of the week the game was.
Was this Hibs Rangers Cup final?
Yeah, but things changed after Hibs beat Rangers in the Scottish Cup final in 2016. A lot of the blame for the pitch invasion at the end was all put on alcohol, which in itself you've really got to question, because where's the evidence that pitch invasion was down to alcohol and not the fact they just won their first cup in over 100 years? There isn't evidence to say it was specifically alcohol. These fans were in a ground for over 2 hours not drinking alcohol. So, but ever since then, it is like it has been a shut book, and there has been no alcohol at football in Scotland, and we're not even going to have the conversation anymore, when it felt like at least before that we were making progress.
Finn, when this law came in Scotland, it wasn't exactly great in England at the time. Kind of English football was tarnished with this sort of, it was kind of a phrase, the English disease, football hooliganism. But in England, you can still have a beer, although it's sold in areas in football stadiums which does not have the pitch in view. That's kind of the way around the rule. How is this not reached to Scotland yet? I mean, can you give us some background and some context on this ban?
Well, yeah, so the ban came in to Scotland after the infamous 1980 Scottish Cup final. I think most people would know, between Rangers and Celtic fans. Celtic had won the match and they were parading the trophy in front of their fans. A few overexcited Hoop supporters had jumped the brand new 10-foot high perimeter fences that had been installed at Hampden to celebrate with the players on the pitch. Some of them made their way up to the Rangers end. The Rangers fans who were left then jumped the barriers and confronted them, and very quickly it kind of escalated from there. The great Archie Macpherson, who was a commentator on the day, described it as like a scene out of Apocalypse Now on his commentary. There were 200 arrests. Both clubs were fined £20,000. A lot of finger pointing. Who was to blame? Celtic fans, Rangers fans, the police, the SFA. But it was George Younger, who was the Secretary of State for Scotland at the time. It was him that kind of blamed alcohol for this. And an Act of Parliament was passed banning the sale of alcohol within all Scottish sporting grounds. So it wasn't just football, it was rugby, it was everything. That ban was actually lifted at rugby grounds in 2007. It's been mooted that they might do it here, but I think, the 2016 Scottish Cup final didn't help. But to go to a point that Laura made, I do wonder how much of this is still almost like a snobbishness and a classist thing because of the roots of where we are. We've seen this so many times because the roots of our game, I call it that, like Scottish football and British football in a wider thing, it is traditionally the preserve of working class people. And the culture around that was, you work 5 or even 6 days a week. You have your day off to go to the football on Saturday. You get drunk with your mates and that's it. So there is that. And I think football has, in Scotland, had at times an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. But I don't know if it's purely just alcohol. But I think there is still a kind of classist thing that, the common folks are rioting, it must be alcohol that's to blame for it. And like you're saying, Laura, I think there are so many other factors at play here. And you started this question, Andrew, with nodding to the kind of casual culture and the football hooligan culture that was prevalent in England at the time. It was also happening in Scotland too. I think in the 1970s, it wasn't just like the 1980 Cup final was a standalone incident. There was frequently drunken, disorderly trouble at, not just Old Firm matches, but across the country. It's interesting because in Scotland, the ban came in 1980, and it was really throughout the 80s. That's where the casual culture really came to the fore. So goodness knows what would have happened if it hadn't. But, there were really famous firms. They were called these kind of organised groups of gangs. Hibs had a really famous one, and a lot of clubs had them. I think societally, we've changed so much from that point, but for some reason, people in government can't see past the last 30, 40 years of cultural change in Scotland and our attitudes in a wider context to alcohol and the way it can be viewed of alcohol being consumed in football stadia across the world quite happily. I think it's beyond time for a review of it, and surely it's something where, outside of incidents like the 2016 Scottish Cup final, the vast majority of fans, there wouldn't be issues around fans drinking alcohol, consuming it. I think also as well, it's income to clubs that clubs are missing out on. People want to give money to the clubs that they support. If stadiums were open before and potentially even after games for supporters to stick around and to have a chat and to have a beer, I can't see how that could be anything other than beneficial to the clubs themselves.
Just to add on to your point about that, about clubs, bringing in revenue. One of the best parts of my job is kind of, keeping an eye on the lower leagues down in England. And I look at the likes of Dulwich Hamlet FC or Maidstone, who kind of, before they were in the kind of the top level of non-league football, National League, you have National League North and South. But if you're in North and South, for instance, Dulwich Hamlet and Maidstone, they have their own beer. It's kind of part of their community. These clubs have kind of engraced themselves. People go and watch their team play, but they also get to give the club more of their money by drinking their beer, and they can sit next to the pitch and have their beer and watch the game. But once they go up the levels, the rules start to come in place, and it starts to affect these clubs, and they have to think of other ways to bring in new revenue. But to tap into that aspect up in Scotland, it's good for smaller clubs to be able to sell alcohol. And look, there's of course the underlying issue of alcohol abuse, and we have to be careful of kind of, we're not promoting drinking beer, we're not promoting that it's a great thing. You just have to look at other things like advertising in Scottish football needs to be looked at carefully. You see the likes of the former First Minister of Scotland, Henry McLeish, banding together with the Scottish Health Action and Alcohol Problems, trying to highlight that alcohol companies are tapping into this idea of advertising to people, and advertising is a thing that can make you want something more, especially if it's not around. So apparently, I think only Belgium have a higher proportion of alcohol advertising. Scotland are second in the whole world, and it's pretty. If we just manage it in a way, like you're saying, Finn, culturally, we have changed as a nation.
Can we start trusting people a bit more? Look, right, there's a lot to unpack there, but on two different levels. Firstly, you're mentioning the difference with rugby. Rugby fans are treated completely different to football fans.
Yeah, agreed.
Whether you like it or not, that is just fact. You don't get train loads going to the rugby being told they're dry. You don't get buses being stopped by police on motorways and being hauled out for all the drink they've got. And on top of that, what you get is police actually boasting about the hauls that they do on the motorways with their photos of all the beers piled up and the bags they've got. And they're proud of stopping these fans going to an away day when they're doing absolutely nothing wrong, drinking a few bottles on a bus with their mates, because they know fine well they can't do it once they get to the actual ground itself. We're being treated like the lower class. But also on the flip side of that, you're talking about the money coming into the game. There are so many ways. It's not just a case of, money equals, like beer equals money, and money is good. It's you can regulate it. You can regulate the number of drinks you get per ticket, for example. You can put alcohol on sale that has a lower percentage compared to some beers you might get in the pub. You can also charge more as well, which will discourage your average punter and in turn might make them pay less. But there's ways to regulate it. It's not just, it's on sale, they make lots of money, they get very, very drunk. There's different things at play here.
And there's that aspect of the fan experience, maximising your fan experience. And there's been arguments to suggest that if there was access to casual refreshment at a stadium, it would stop the rush from the pubs to the stadium.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then you have just this massive kind of, congestion on roads that have to be policed, and people can just take their time.
Yeah, because right now the culture in Scotland is so bad. We turn up for games at 5-3. You will there's times when I worked at Motherwell and you'd look at it around the ground at 10-3 and you go, wow, it's a really low crowd today. And then 5-10 minutes into the game, you're looking around going, it's actually the same as normal. Like, where have they all come from? How have they get in this fast? And it's this culture to go, and what you actually find is they'll go to bars before the game and they'll end up binge drinking for like an hour before the game. They will not pace themselves. They'll go to the game and they'll be in more of a state than they would have if they were just going out for a normal afternoon drinking with their mates. The whole culture here is wrong. We've all been to games abroad. We've all been to games even in England where you can drink in the concourse. It is completely different. And we all enjoy it. Like, there's games I've been to in Germany standing in the stand, in with the ultras, with a beer in my hand. It's brilliant. And holding that beer in my hand doesn't make me any different. Like, it doesn't change my behaviour. The attitude here is once you've crossed a turnstile, you're suddenly this bad person if you have alcohol in your system. If I want to be an arsehole, I will be an arsehole regardless of what location I'm in. It doesn't matter where I am or what time of day it is. If I'm going to be that drunk person, I'm going to be that drunk person regardless of whether I'm behind a turnstile or in front of a turnstile.
Yeah, I still think it's not an easy thing to just flip a switch and allow it. I think you've mentioned a lot of good points, Laura, being able to regulate it, but policing is still going to be an issue, and safety is still going to be an issue. So it's all about just finding the right way to introduce it, and I don't think it's going to be easy.
The thing is, though, there isn't evidence right now to say it doesn't work.
Absolutely.
So why not try it and actually use data to decide rather than the suits telling us what is going to happen? There's this really stupid scenario when you actually break it down and think about it. So see, there's an example here at Motherwell. So at Fir Park, they've got a bar. It's called the Cooper Bar. It is in the stand. Now, it's 2 floors up. It is above the concourse. You're allowed to have alcohol in it up until 3 o'clock because it is in a stand in itself. It's away from the ground. Technically, it's away from the ground and it's not facing the pitch. You can't see the pitch. So that is classed as a bar. So you're allowed to have a drink in it. What you can't do is 20 feet below in the concourse, directly below, you can't have a drink there, which is also in the same stand and without a view of the pitch. How are they trusted 20 feet above but below? Because you have to walk through a turnstile to get to the concourse below, that suddenly they're not trusted all of a sudden.
I think it just feeds into that. I completely agree with you, but I think it feeds into that hangover of people that refuse to try and move on from incidents that happened 40, almost 50 years ago, and the culture of what society was like then. Because I think one of the interesting things is the drinking habits of younger people are actually incredibly different to even what I remember. You know, like it was a rites of passage to go down to the park and drink vodka when you were 14 or whatever out in the freezing cold, like we all did when we were growing up. But I think it's a completely different thing generationally now for younger people in general, but therefore I think a lot of younger football fans, they don't have that same need or desire to have as brutal a drinking culture as I think a lot of Scottish society has had in generations previously. And if you think about it, like the ban came in 1980, like I wasn't even born by that point, so it's almost 40 years ago. And that's time enough for essentially 2 generations of football fans now to come in that have never experienced it. And I just don't think have that same association and relationship with alcohol that people did from the 1980s and before, where I think for so many people it was something more of a crutch, potentially an emotional crutch, a social crutch, or things that you needed it to have a good time. And I think those perceptions and views around alcohol in general in our country, maybe slowly, but they are changing away from that. And I think that will continue to grow. So I don't see how it can not be part of a conversation forward facing, you know, laughing at that off mic because this is Scottish football we're talking about, but trying to be forward facing, looking at our future, saying that it can't possibly not be up for discussion of bringing alcohol and drinking alcohol at Scottish football grounds back in.
But the problem is that who in Scottish football is actually challenging this right now? Who out of the leaders of our game is actually pushing for this?
Ron Gordon at Hibernian, and I think Hearts and Aberdeen also brought this up last season, saying that this is a little bit of a backwards way of dealing things. So
yeah, but that's 3 out of 42 clubs. It should be louder.
For sure. I think there is a genuine consensus across football clubs that they would like to do it, but that there's no appetite for it in the Scottish government to change things around. There certainly wasn't.
Shock.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So I don't know, Laura. Maybe you can start an action group. Right, I think we should call it there. Thanks so much, guys, for giving us your time. Thanks for turning up this time, Laura, rather than going to see some like famous vets or West End shows. Yeah, we might not be back next Tuesday, but we do have some plans in place for some specials throughout the World Cup period. So keep your eyes peeled and your ears plugged into your podcast wherever you listen. That's it from us. We'll see you soon. Go listen to something else now. Bye.